In the dark where the strange things flicker, Jennifer Hicks takes you in a little deeper.
Cryptids, UFOs, stories that chill, the truth's out there, and she's got the thrill. Welcome to Creepy Culture,
Where the unknown comes alive.
Hi, welcome to Creepy Culture. Thank you for being here. Today I have Darrell Denton. He's going to be sharing with us some of his encounters and research and his upcoming documentary. How are you doing, Darrell?
I'm doing good, thank you. Appreciate you having me.
I appreciate you being here so much. Thank you.
Yeah, you doing good?
Yeah, I'm great. Are you?
Yeah, I'm good. A lot of times I have people that try to interrupt these things, so I apologize if something happens while we're on here. So,
Oh, it's fine.
so glad you had me on. So, I guess I can start off with how I got involved in this, if that's what you'd like me to do. And
No, that's true.
I got it started in this in November of '92 when I had my first sighting, and it's been going on 34 years ago now. But I was deer hunting on my grandfather's farm in rural Cannon County, Tennessee. And when I say rural, it's in the middle of nowhere. I grew up on that farm pretty much, and my granddad had lived there most of his life on the same property, not in the same location. But me and three of my buddies deer hunt up there every year, opening week of black powder season, which is called muzzleloader in Tennessee. And we got up there the Sunday before. The actual season opens on Monday and goes through the following Sunday. So we went there every year the past 5 years, and I pulled my camper up there with my truck, and a buddy of mine named Cody rode with me, and Scott and Jason pulled the truck with a trailer, and we all had ATVs so we could ride to our deer stand. And the particular spot I was hunting at, you couldn't ride an ATV to it. I had to go a pretty good route. But this particular hunt was my first sighting and was life-changing for me. So I'd never seen anything on that farm, and I'd hunted on it all my life. But I'd never been this far in. It was a good 2.5, 3 miles in. A good walk, 45 minutes to an hour to get there, up straight up hills, almost 45-degree angles. My granddad come down that morning. He had told me the day before where I should go if I wanted the trophy deer, because that's what I was basically looking for. So he said he would come down and wake us up the next morning. The day before, I'd brought my stand over there, walked to that spot that he had told me to, and put my stand up around a tree and kind of did a little scouting there, and crossed the creek and hung a drag rag in a tree over there. A drag rag is what you put on your feet to cover up the human scent, and hopefully the scent will bring in a male buck deer also. It helps do that. And that particular morning, my granddad come down and knocked on the side of the camper and said, "Y'all need to get up." And we got up, and the guys went their way on their four-wheelers, and me, I walked behind my granddad's house and went through about a 200-yard wide field, and that's where the cattle were at inside this fenced-in area. It was a very large field, about 200 yards wide, mostly sage grass this time of year. Walked to the edge of it, and I run into the other side of the fence, and there's barbed wire on top of it, 2 or 3 strands, and climbed over the fence and jumped into the leaves and had my equipment, my gun, and I was ready to go up to the spot. It's a good walk from there, but that was the start. And I'm walking up the hill there, and I hear a noise to the left, and it sounded like someone walking. Kind of startled me because nobody should be in there, especially a person hunting. My granddad wouldn't allow that. And went on up the hill a little ways and heard it, and I shined my flashlight over it, over in that area. I didn't see anything, but it sounded like a person walking. It didn't sound like a cow or a horse, any type of animal. So I was a little unnerved that it stayed on my mind. So I went on up the top of that hill. It's like I said, these hills are like 45-degree angle. They're almost straight up, and
Yeah.
long walk to the top and across the first hill and the second hill, and a little barbed wire fence in the bottom of it that you could step over. It was old and broken down, and got to the top of the third hill. By the time I got down to the bottom of it, to the creek where I was at the day before, there's a creek there that used to be an old grist mill, and my granddad's old home place was there. He was born there and lived there till he was 8 or 9 years old, and it had fallen in. The only thing that was remaining of it was the chimney and part of the tin roof, and I could see that the day before. And I got down to the spot there next to the creek where my tree stand was already around the tree, and I stopped because, again, up on the hill to the left of me, I heard it sound like a person walking, but it was very heavy. Kind of startled me a little bit. I said, thinking, what? Somebody's in here? And I shined the light. I had a real bright light. Didn't see anything. And then it started walking again. I shined it again. Did not see anything again. And I was a little nervous about thinking somebody might be in there. But I went ahead and got into my tree stand, put my feet in the climber and sat back. And I got to the top of the tree, and the day before, I'd cut some limbs off behind me, and I had a place to hang my binoculars and my lunch. And to the other side, I had a safety strap tied around the tree that I could put around me. And I also had my fanny pack that had a powder horn and some firing caps that go on the end of the muzzle loader, and also some Hornady bullets, and they're extra ones in case I'd fired and wanted to reload. And I got in my tree stand. I put the safety strap around me, and I have a 28-foot rope that's tied to my belt loop, and that my gun is attached to the end of that on the ground. And after I get set in and the safety strap on me, I pull that to the top and got my gun up there, and I have a little bar in front of me that pulls up, and it has a camo cover on it that's attached to the tree stand, and it pretty much conceals me from right below my chin all the way down. It covers up my boots and everything, and I can lay my gun against that bar in front of me, and that's what I did. So I'm waiting to hunt, and it's still dark, and it's about close to 8 o'clock in the morning. It's been daylight for a little bit, but it was such a thick fog that morning, I couldn't see across the creek in front of me to the old home place, the clearing there in the middle of the woods. And finally it cleared off, and it was a sunny day, and it was a good hunting day. I could hear the regular animals in the leaves, the squirrels running around, and it was a good day to hunt. And looked around, and I could see the drag rag I'd hung on the tree across the stream the day before that would hopefully lure in a buck deer with a scent on it. And I could see to the left of me, there was a huge cane thicket. It looked like bamboo type looking stuff. It grows 12 to 15 foot tall, and it's real thick, and it went all the way down this creek bank. And I couldn't see around the left of it. It'd been around the corner there, kind of a curve in the creek. And I've been sitting there a little bit, and a little after 8, probably, I don't remember the exact time, around 8:15 probably, I noticed to the left of me a deer, come out of somewhere on the other side of that cane thicket, maybe in the cane thicket, walked through the creek. The water there is about 2 to 3 feet deep, and walked up the bank onto the top of the bank there there's a game trail that goes down the top of that creek bank that runs past in front of where I'm sitting and runs across right to that area where I hung the drag rag on that maple or oak tree. And this doe was acting normal, and then 2 more came out right behind her, probably yearlings of hers, and they followed the same path she did, and they were just kind of milling around in the leaves and eating acorns. It was a big year for a big harvest for acorns that year, and they were eating acorns, and I was watching them. They were just walking around acting normal. And I'm setting up at kind of a 45-degree angle, so I'm kind of almost looking over the creek at the angle I am on top of them. And of course, they couldn't see me, and they never did. And I watched them walk around for a good while, thinking that was a great sign, because normally the male buck deer will come in after the female doe. And all of a sudden, for some reason, the female, the mother, figured of these two, doe, she was looking to the left and just froze. She wasn't even moving. And her ears just fluttered just a little bit, but she was staring straight into that cane thicket over in that area, frozen, like she was trying to just staring down something. And the other two deer, one to the right of her and one to the left, were just staring in the same area. Well, I'm thinking this is a big buck. It's about to come out of this cane thicket over here. It's a real good sign. I'm excited about this. And all of a sudden, the larger doe, deer, raises her right front hoof and paws to the ground 3 times, trying to act like she was trying to get something to move in there, as she stared straight into that thicket, and nothing was moving that I could see. And she kept looking, and then she stuck her head up and she blew real loud. It almost sounded like somebody sneezing, except a lot louder, and trying to get the attention of something that was in there. And I'm thinking huge, buck deer that's about to come out and come in there and with these other deer. And all of a sudden she turns to the right and takes off running as fast as she can. I see her run right across, right in front of me as I'm looking down on her. And the other two deer follow her. They're running like somebody had shot at them. And I couldn't understand why they were running like that, because I've never seen deer do that unless somebody did, or somebody walked in to where they were at. And I watched them run till they ran off into the hardwoods till I couldn't see them anymore. And I'm thinking, well, this must be one huge buck deer. And that's all I had on my mind, and that's the only thing that I was concerned about at that time. I was a little startled at why they ran like that. But anyway, so I see this cane thicket. It's to the left of me, and it's moving in the back, and it moves all the way to the middle, and it's like 10 or 12 of the pieces of the cane are moving, and the tops are moving. I'm watching something coming through it. I can't see what it is, but I can see these cane, the top of this cane moving, and it stops right at the edge of where the cane ends. And I can't see around that bend, but I can see it moving. And I'm thinking this is a massive buck deer that's about to come out of this cane, because this stuff's so thick that it's very difficult to walk through. Anything this heavy and big is a big deer, and that had me really excited at that time. And then all of a sudden, this creature steps out, and I can see it when it steps out. It's standing at the end of the cane. It takes one step and leaps the entire creek. The creek was 10 or 12 foot wide. It lands on top of the game trail on top of the creek there. And then it just walks straight down that little game trail right in front of me. I'm looking over right on it, and it stops right in front of me. It turns, and it looks right at me. It knew exactly where I was at, and I'm sure that's what I heard when I went in. And it just stared at me, and then it started showing me its teeth. It was really mad. I could tell the way it looked. It was not happy at all that I was in there. It was the meanest, ugliest looking thing that I've ever seen still to this day. And it was so mad. And it just kept gritting his teeth, and it kept growling at me while it was staring at me. And by this point, I'm thinking, what in the world is this? I've never seen anything like this, I really didn't know what to do. My thought in my mind was, do I pull my 50 caliber rifle up? I've got one shot, and do I shoot this thing, or what do I do? And at that particular time, I was doing my best just to catch my breath. I couldn't even breathe. I've never been that scared. I don't scare easy, but this thing was really mad at me for being there, and it was obvious that it was. And then it just walks over to the tree there where that drag rag is. It's standing right with a limb, which is about 8 foot or a little more. it just reaches up and pulls it down, sniffs of it, and then just rips the whole tree limb out of the tree. And this tree limb was not anything massive. It was 2 or 3 inches at the base where it went into the tree, but still took a lot of power to rip that thing out like that. And it just stood on the ground, and then it walked right back over where it was at, and it's looking at me again with this most mad, angry looking look that I can't. It's unbelievable how it looked. And one side of its mouth, would be the face, and it would be the right side of its mouth was kind of in contortion, like it had been in an accident or deformed or something. It was. I can't. It's hard to explain what I'm saying, but it didn't look right. And it's still showing me its teeth and really growling now, these deep growls. And I'm thinking, do I lower this bar and jump and run out of here, or do I shoot this thing? And I was so unnerved, I really didn't know what decision to make on it. I didn't want to shoot it, but at the same time, I thought it was crossing that creek and it was going to come pull me out of this tree. And about that time, it lets out this massive scream yell, between a scream and a yell that I've never heard since on any Bigfoot recordings. And I've heard a lot of Bigfoot scream and yell since then, but not like this one. It was the most blood-curdling scream that I've ever heard. It was really angry at me for being there, and when it yelled, it was so loud that it echoed all down this hollow. And I still can remember, I feel that feeling right this moment as I tell the story, and I do every time I tell it. I remember the hair raising up on the back of my neck, and I remember my heart just almost stopping. And I thought, well, this is it. This thing's coming across this creek. It's going to pull me out of this tree, and it's over with. And I'm sitting there. I reached down. I grabbed my 50 caliber, slowly pulled it back. I pulled the trigger back, and it clicked. I'm going to get one shot before it comes and pulls me out of this tree. And then all of a sudden, it looks at me, and then it turns and starts walking away. It walks probably 10 or 15 feet, and it stops, and it turns its head and looks back at me, and then it turns and walks straight away. I watched this thing walk until it walked into the hardwoods until I couldn't see it anymore. And it takes 15 or 20 minutes to get down that climbing stand, and I wasn't taking that long. I lowered that bar, and I jumped 28 foot out of the top of this tree and landed in the leaves and slid all the way down the hill into the creek with my gun above my head, and jumped up out of the creek, took off running as fast as I could up that hill the same way I came in, and looking back constantly to see if it was coming. And time I got to the top of the first hill, and I started down the first hill, the backside of it, about halfway up the second hill, I looked back on the top of the hill. There it stood. And that just kicked in more adrenaline for me, because I thought, this thing is coming after me. It's going to run me down. And I looked back, and it was just standing there next to a tree looking at me. And I ran as hard as I could. And these hills are so steep, I just had to stop for air. When I got halfway up, I just didn't have it. You couldn't breathe. They were so hard to climb. And when I got to the top of that, when I was looking back, it was still sitting there. Going down the third hill, I'm running as fast as I can. Looking back, I don't see this creature coming after me. And I'm having to stop to climb over this barbed wire fence that I had to climb over when I came in, and I'm not stopping. So I try to jump this barbed wire fence, and it's 7 foot tall probably. And I cleared the fence, but it caught my pants leg and just ripped my pants all the way up to my knee and tore a huge gash in my leg. And I just kept running. I didn't even know I was cut. And looking behind me, I didn't see it. I landed in my grandfather's field there where the cattle were. I run through this sage grass, 200-yard wide field, and got to the gate and opened the gate up and locked it back. Looking back, I didn't see the creature anywhere. And I ran into his backyard up on his wooden porch, old farmhouse porch, and ran through the back door, which went into his kitchen area, and reached out and shut the screen door and put the lock on it and slammed the door and ran into the right to the living area and sat down in the corner of it. There's an old pot-belly stove that's set between the corner and the middle of my grandfather's house, and wood was in it burning. Of course, it was wintertime, and I just sat down on the floor. I was so out of gas I couldn't even speak. My granddad was sitting there to the left in a rocking chair and rocking, and he looked at me and said, "Boy, what's wrong with you?" And my granddad, he and I were super close. He always called me boy. He never did call me by my name. And I couldn't talk. I just looked at him I was so out of breath from running. Then I caught my breath. I got up and went and looked out the window. I went to the back door and looked out to make sure this thing wasn't still coming after me. And by that time, I caught my breath a little bit. I grabbed some water and I came in and sat down on the couch next to where he was at. And he said, "Boy, what's wrong with you? You look like you've seen a ghost." And I said, "No, Granddad, I seen a monster." And he said, "A monster? There ain't no monsters around here." I said, "What I seen was a monster." And he said, "What did it look like?" And I told him. He says, "Oh, you seen a woodbooger?" I said, "A woodbooger?" I said, "I've been with you and mostly lived here most of my life. When I was a kid, I'm here every summer with you, helping you in the fields, and you never told me anything about a woodbugger." And he says, "Well, didn't want to make you scared to camp out in the barn or camp in the woods or hunt or do anything you wanted to do with your family and your cousins. And they around here, I've seen 4 in my lifetime, close up. I'll be working in the field and I'll see one just standing there watching me work sometimes. He'll be standing at the fence and they don't bother you. They're just real territorial. I should have told you'd probably got in his area and nobody been in that area for years." And I said, "You never told me about this thing and I sure wouldn't have been in the woods if I'd have known it." And he said, "That's exactly why." He said, "Funny about these creatures, I hear them all the time in the woods, and I used to ask my granddad about those sounds, and he would call them a catamite." And okay, what is that? Just some kind of creature, a catamite. That's what it was. And didn't think much about it. And he said, "Yeah, in the wintertime, they've been living here long as I have, and they get hungry. They come to the hen house, and they'll get 3 or 4 chickens at a time. They won't take them all. And they'll leave a little pile of sticks and rocks like they're paying for them." And I said, "Granddad, I'm glad you never told me about it because I would have never hunted." And that was my last hunt for 7 years. So I did a little hunting out, I take that back, did a little hunting out of my truck in a field, but I didn't hunt in the woods. I didn't go in the woods for 7 years. And my buddies still hunted up there every year. I stayed at the house with my granddad while they hunted. And I told them a little bit about it. They looked at me like I was crazy and thought I'd seen a bear, and like everybody seems to think. But that was my first encounter. That's what got me into this thing that I've been in for all these years.
Wow, that's terrifying.
Yeah, it really was. I'm not, like I said, I never got scared of much. I've camped in the woods many a night there on my grandfather's farm, and wasn't worried about nothing. Just me and my dog, and a lot of times, and my sleeping bag and my old single shot 410 shotgun when I was a kid. And, I never thought about much that could hurt us. About the worst thing would be a bear and you run it off. But, it was pretty amazing to think these creatures actually existed. So I'd always heard of Bigfoot when I was younger, but I thought they all lived out west in California, Oregon, or British Columbia or somewhere. I didn't know they were in Tennessee. But they are. So,
And you said you were 6'5",
right.
and you had that rag tied up like 8 foot. How tall do you think that thing was?
It was right around 8 foot, or maybe a couple inches over that. His head was pretty level, a little bit above the branch, so it was right around 8 foot, a little bit more, not a whole lot more. But it was the meanest, ugliest looking thing. And I've seen a lot of Bigfoot since then, or some of them are forest people. I think there's a difference between some of the Bigfoot. I believe I've seen 4 or 5 different types, but I've never seen one like that again, and I hope I never do. That was my first and only, and did a lot of research on those things. Of course, back when that happened, there wasn't any groups or radio shows or podcasts
Right.
or anybody you could talk to. So you were pretty much on your own because, people think you're crazy when you start talking about seeing something like that in the woods.
Right.
There was, I mentioned it to a few people and they believed me, but I just thought I'd seen a bear. That's what everybody said. You just seen a bear.
They blame
But
everything on the bears.
they do. They really do. They still do. So,
I know.
it's pretty amazing what I've been through since that day and time.
Forest rangers, the Forest Service, they really blame everything on bears.
They surely do. They really do. It's amazing. I hear it all the time. And, a lot of people, now that we have this day and time where people can feel safer telling their story or their encounter, their experience they were involved in, with shows like yours and, groups like I have, and people are a little more open-minded now, they seem to be with these things. And
yeah.
because I think there's a whole lot more people now that believe in them than they did at one time. And, the more I get, the more I've been involved in this. I have so many people that message me every week. It's amazing. Want to know what they have at their house, or what does it look like, or what do I feed them? Or, I mean, it's just so many questions. I get at least 10 or 12 of those a week from people, sending me a message because they don't know what to do. A lot of them have never experienced anything like this. So I try to help as much as I can. Back in the day, I had 3 teams. In the early 2000s, I had 3 teams that we would go out around the Tennessee, Kentucky area. We would go. I'd send a team here, and there'd be 2 or 3 of us in each team, and we would go to certain locations and try to help these people and tell them what they had. And most of the time, it was a Bigfoot or some other type of creature. But it's pretty amazing how many people have experienced them. But that thing changed my life, though. It really did. I had nightmares for months. It just, I had a really hard time believing that I even seen this thing. It was so hard to put it around, to wrap my mind around it. But I did. And as time went on, it kind of paid off because it was really a good learning example. That's for sure.
And you said it had something up with its jaw. Can you explain what it looked like, the one you saw? Because you said you never seen it again, like another one that looked like it.
Yeah, I went at that time. When I left there, it was a couple of weeks. It was stayed on my mind constantly. I was still trying to work and had a family, and I was. But it's something don't go away. I mean, when you go to sleep at night, sometimes you're thinking about it. So, the only option I had at that time is I went to the library and I started looking for books about these creatures. And I did find a couple of books that was right on to what I'd seen. And the one book that I'd found, it had in there the top 10 type of Bigfoot. And the number 1, I don't remember what it was, but the number 2 was called the Woodbooger. And it looked just like what I'd seen. I mean, it was identical except for the eyes. The eyes were red. The one I seen that day had black eyes or dark brown eyes, and didn't have red eyes. But besides that, it even looked like the same creature. And then it listed on up to 10 other different type. And I've seen what I believe the number 3, the number 4, and possibly the number 6. I believe I've seen 4 or 5 of different types of Bigfoot. And the Woodbooger, it said, only lived in Tennessee, Arkansas, and Mississippi. So it's mainly a southern type one. But like I said, I've never seen another one, and I hope I don't.
Right. So it's a Woodbooger. Does it look like Patty, or does it look different?
Oh, nothing like Patty. No, it's more. Patty's more bulky and looks more a thicker looking creature. This creature had a huge chest, real big legs down to the knee, big arms, big head. But from his knees down, his legs were just smaller, more like my legs or a human's legs. And of course, it had big feet. They were in the leaves. I couldn't see everything about them, but they were big. And it probably weighed, I don't know what it weighed, guessing probably at least 400 or 500, maybe 600 pounds. It was a big, good-sized creature. It was solid black color. It was completely black, no other color on it. His hands looked like human. It had a lot of human features. The hairline from his forehead up was hair. The forehead was like black leather, and around the face was like black leather. Right under the eyes, it started to be more hair, and around the mouth and under it, hair. But the skin itself looked like black leather with like cracks in it. And I was only, I'm guessing 50 or 60 feet from this thing because I'm in a tree and I'm looking over on it almost at the angle I was. But I could see its features pretty good. The mouth was it was either a deformity or something had happened to the creature, but it was kind of twisted. It was on one side, it was almost looked like it had been scarred or damaged its face right there somehow. But it was mean and it was mad and it didn't like me there. That's one thing that did let me know. And it was very convincing. It's
Right.
probably the most convincing I've ever been convinced by with anything. So
I'm wondering if you heard the same yell I heard because the yells are also very convincing to get away from them real quick. So,
I've learned a lot about these creatures over the years. It's made a big difference. If I hadn't had my second encounter, I really don't think that I would have ever been where I'm at today. I know I wouldn't have been because I had in my mind that these things were nothing but mean and evil creatures. And, going back today, I've even talked about this even 10 years after it happened to my granddad before he passed away. If this thing wanted to hurt me, it could have. It just wanted me out of its area. It didn't want me in there. I probably messed up its hunt. It was probably after those deer. So, that's my thought. And, when it was standing on top of the hill when I went over the first hill, it was probably another one. It probably wasn't the same one. And it looked like the same one, but I'm sure I've learned now that, by being around quite a few of these creatures over the years that they're always within a family. They're a clan, or people call them that. I call them a family. And there's always 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 of them close by. So, if it wanted to hurt me, it could have. It just wanted to scare me out of its area, walked off, and it done a good job. It done a really good job. So,
absolutely. I'd
yeah.
have been gone too. What was that word you said? Cat of what?
A catermite. Catermite. My granddad
I've heard.
called them a catermite. I don't know what that means, but it's called catermite. And my friend Tim Coombo Baker from Alabama that I spoke with this last year at I actually spoke at the Nebraska conference, and he was also speaking there. And then I spoke with him in August at the Tennessee Wildman conference. He was also speaking there. And he and I become pretty close friends. And it was funny because he was telling me his granddad always called them catermites. So I'd never heard that term since my granddad used it until he mentioned it this last April, the first time he brought that up, catermite. And I guess that's what the older folks call these creatures because they knew about them. Yeah.
I forgot about that word until you said it, and then I had a flashback of my aunt saying that. That's an old catamount or whatever they say.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought she was talking about a cat.
Yeah, that's what my granddad or my grandmother at nighttime when I was staying at my granddad's house, she would say, "Y'all, me and my cousins will be there, and y'all get on in. It's almost dark. The boogeyman's going to get you." And that was a common thing to say. And I found out that the boogeyman was the Woodbooger. So my granddad told me that. He goes, your grandma said the boogeyman, the Woodbooger's the boogeyman. So
absolutely,
we didn't know what that was. And my granddad, I've been sitting on the back porch with him. You'd hear a whippoorwill off in the distance, and then you'd hear some big long scream or something. And my granddad goes, "There's one of them catamounts."
I forgot about that word until you said it. And then it just rang a bell in my head. And I was
Of course, growing up, listening to that when I was a little kid, I lived with my grandparents until my parents would drove. They worked in Nashville, and I stayed with my grandparents till I was 6 years old, and while they worked, and they come home on Friday and Saturday, so they were 92 miles from that place, from Nashville. So I heard those things for years, and my granddad would go, "I wish them catamount's would stop," and I don't even think I ever asked him what a catamount was, but
Me either. I was just
I,
like, whatever.
yeah, that's what I thought. I thought it was just some kind of creature in the woods that,
hmm
maybe a bird or something. I didn't know what it was, but it didn't really bother me any. But after you see one of those things, you don't forget about them, that's for sure. But
No doubt.
like I said, if it hadn't been for my second encounter, I would have never got over this. I would have never stopped having nightmares. It literally changed my whole life. I was quite shocked, really, how bad it changed my life. But it
What
did.
happened at the second one?
Well, it's a long story, so I won't go into it forever, but I'll tell you what happened. I was fishing. I have a place this was in 1999. Now, I haven't been in the woods since 92. I wouldn't go in the woods for anything.
I don't blame you.
What little hunting I did, I'd pull up in my truck in the field at my grandfather in Cannon County had a farm. Then I had another grandfather in Smith County had a farm. Both of them had big farms, and I could hunt out of my truck, and you'd see deer come out from the edge of the woods, and that was the only hunting I did. I didn't do a lot of that, but I didn't go in the woods. I was too frightened to go in there. I was kind of embarrassed to think that I was that scared of these things, but I was. And anyway, I have a place on the Cumberland River in Tennessee that I fished at for years, and it's right in the middle of nowhere too, in almost Cheatham County, Tennessee, and it's on the Cumberland River. It's an old water treatment plant or sewer treatment plant or something there. And a friend of mine had taken me there, and that I went to school with, those two guys, and their uncle or cousin worked there. Been working there for years, and you would pull in through it. At that time there was a guard when we started going there, but as I started going there years later, the guard shack was gone. But you had to pull in this fence, and you go down behind it, and nobody could go in there unless you knew somebody. And nobody ever fished down there. It was just a place that we found. It was a really good fishing place, and it was so far out in a rural area, we never seen anybody down there because they wouldn't even know how to get there. Plus, it's in that type of area where people wouldn't go anyway. And you go through this gate, like you park your truck, and you walk about 200 yards there's a creek that runs out into the Cumberland River, and right next to it, there's a large sandbar that runs all the way out to the edge of that creek. And then you got the Cumberland River to the left of it. It's a really good place to fish. You can walk out on that sandbar and reel your line in if you catch something, and instead of getting it tangled in all the tree roots and everything else sticking out of the bank. And I've been fishing there, but I hadn't been there in quite a while. It's probably been, I don't know how many years, 10 or 12 years since I'd been fishing there. But I fished there quite a bit when I was in high school and after high school a little bit, but mostly with those two guys, not by myself. And I had permission to go there anytime, and I went down there by myself. I wanted to go fishing. It was February or March, can't remember which one. It was still cool outside in the 30s or low 40s, and that time of year we fish for crappie on the river, and it's a big thing to fish for in Tennessee. And I parked my vehicle there and went through the gate and walked down that trail. It's about, like I said, about 200 yards till you get to the creek and the overlook there. It's a perfect place to fish. It's a clearing in the woods, just a natural clearing next to a creek, and great place to set up your stuff and fish. And I got my rides out and I was fishing, and I had a bucket of minnows that I'd brought in, and there was 4 or 5 dozen minnows in there, and I'd caught a couple fish, and I'd walk down the bank and walk down the sandbar and reel them up and come up and put them on a stringer and hang them in the water. And I went back up to sit down. I had a 5-gallon bucket that I sat on because I carried my gear in it, and I'd turn it upside down. I'd sit on it just next to with my back on a tree, and my minnow bucket was right next to the 5-gallon bucket. And I went up to talk to I went up to get another minnow, and I looked in my bucket. It was gone. my entire bucket was gone.
Oh no.
And I couldn't figure out what had happened to it. I got up and went looking around. I thought, well, how could that happen? There's nobody in here. And I looked around to see that, make sure the wind hadn't blew it in the water. I didn't see it anywhere. Of course, the styrofoam minute bucket doesn't sink anyway. It floats. And it was gone. I couldn't find it anywhere. And I couldn't figure out what had happened to it. It was very strange. And I got to looking around everywhere to see if anybody was there. And nothing, no evidence of anyone. And left because I had no minnows. Got all my gear and went back and got all my stuff, went back to my truck and left. And next week I came back and the water was up a little bit that time. And I was a little different. I couldn't on the sandbar, but because the water was a little high, I just fished off the same area that I did, but I couldn't walk down it. And brought me another minnow bucket with minnows in it, and set all up and started fishing, and was catching a few. And it was a little windy that day. It had been storming some, and came up after I caught a fish. My minnow bucket was gone again, and
What?
I started thinking, this is really strange because. I mean, I'd fished here a lot of times when I was younger, and we never had any incident like that to happen. And I started looking around and couldn't find it. I thought maybe the wind blew it in the river because it was pretty windy. Nope, it wasn't anywhere to be found. So I had to pack up my stuff and leave again because I had no minnows. And I went on back, and then it was maybe 2 weeks later I came back, and the conditions were back to normal. The sandbar was out of the water, and you could fish like I could the first time. And this time, though, I tied a rope around the handle on my styrofoam minnow bucket, the metal wire handle. And it was about, I don't know, 15-foot rope. It was just a little small, thin rope, and I tied it around it and set all my gear up, and I sat down and I tied the rope around the tree I was sitting next to, which was connected to the bucket. And I got all set up, and I caught a few fish, and went up and sat back, and I heard something. And to the left of me was a huge kudzu. I don't know if you know what kudzu is, but it looks like big, thick vines, and it's just real thick, and it's real high. It grows real thick and high on the river banks and around railroad tracks. And I heard something in there, but I didn't see anything. And I'm thinking, well, it could be a deer or anything, because there's a game trail that run right through that. The game trail I walked down on went through the middle of that, but you had to crawl on your knees to get in there. And anyway, I went on, kept on fishing, and I was doing pretty good, having a pretty good day. And then I went down to put a fish on the stringer, and I came back up, sat down, and I looked over, and my bucket was stretched. The rope was on the tree. The bucket was pulled tight. The rope was tight. It was down in that kudzu where that game trail went, and it was stretched tight. And I immediately focused on that. What is going on here? And it was, that trail's kind of wet and damp anyway from all the animals on it. And I went, there's deer that walk on it all the time, and other type of animals too that come down that old game trail. I was out in the middle of the country, and I had to get on my knees to get through that stuff. I could see my bucket because the rope was tied to it, and I got in there. And when I got in there, up to the left, I seen a minnow bucket in the kudzu, and over to the right, a little further up, I seen another minnow bucket, and I thought, well, there's my minnow buckets, and that I couldn't find. And here's this minnow bucket stretched tight. The lid is off. All the water's sloshed out except just a little bit. And it's real muddy right there. And right in the mud, right next to the lid, is a footprint. And it looks like a person. And I'm thinking, why would anybody be out here in March, 35, 40 degrees, barefooted on the Cumberland River? Because that just doesn't happen in Tennessee. And that's what I was thinking. So I looked in my minnow bucket. I had one minnow left, and I had like 4 or 5 dozen that I'd brought. Something had got the minnows out, and I couldn't figure out what it was. So I grabbed both those minnow buckets. I grabbed that minnow bucket, and I went and sat back down on the bucket that I had there where I normally sat. And I said, I'm going to catch this person, because I'm thinking it's a kid. Because this track that I looked at was not a huge track. It was probably maybe 10 inches, 11 inches. It was, it wasn't a 22-inch track or anything like I hear of a lot, but
Mhm.
I'm thinking it's a person, what I'm thinking. So I act like I'm fishing. I have my peripheral vision to the left, waiting to see whatever that was in there. And I act like I'm fishing. I'm just acting normal. My bucket's sitting next to me, and all of a sudden, probably an hour goes by, maybe a little more. I see this head pop out, and it's leaning over like that. It just leans over and it's looking at me. And I seen that thing, and I said, "Oh my God, not another one of these things. I don't want anything to do with these creatures."
Right.
I grabbed all my gear, picked everything up, my bucket and everything, and I made my way as fast as I could get out of there and got back to my truck, loaded everything up. All the way home, I'm thinking about it, thinking about it, thinking about it. All next week, I'm thinking about it. And I made my mind up I wasn't going back down there, and I just couldn't do it. I had to go back. So I went back the next week. I carried my shotgun with me. Um, and I had my fishing gear. I came in, I sat down. I never baited a hook. I act like I had my poles set up and like I was fishing. My minnow bucket was sitting there. My shotgun was on the right hand side of the tree, leaning against it. I was waiting to see what this thing was going to do or how many of these things were in there. And it was a good while that I sat there. These things are super intelligent. You can't hardly trick them. And I'd probably been there a couple hours. I was just about ready to pack up and go because maybe they'd moved on down the riverbank somewhere. They weren't there. And then I seen it lean out again, holding onto a tree. It leaned out. And it was a she. She seen me looking at her and she went back in real quick. I just kept sitting there staring in there. And I reached around the side of the tree and I had my hand on my shotgun. It was laying on the ground to the right of me, in case this thing tried to attack me or whatever. I didn't know what it had an intention to do, but
Right.
it started staring at me. It finally quit coming in and out. It was just holding right next to the tree, just staring at me, looking at me. And I was looking back at it, staring. And, I didn't really know what to do. It wasn't a big one. It was a younger one. And I just, for some reason, said, "Hey, I don't know what your intentions are, but I'm not here to hurt you. I'm just here to fish and not to bother you or your people." Something similar to that. And it didn't make any noise or any acquisition like it knew what I was saying, but they do. They understand English. And it just sat there and looked at me, and then it went in, and then I'm still sitting waiting because I felt a little more comfortable because this thing hadn't tried to charge me. It hadn't tried to come to me. None of the other ones had come to me. And I can hear some in there moving around in this kazoo. And then all of a sudden another one comes out. It's about the same size as this one. It's behind that one. The one in front is a female. She's about five, a little over, maybe 5 foot, a little more tall. The one behind it is a male. He's about the same height. And then a big one comes out. And I really got nervous when I seen him come out. He was behind those. He was behind those two. And you have to bend down in there because the kazoo's so thick. But he stood up. And I could see him above where the kazoo was thick, part of his chest up. And he was probably 7 foot tall. And that's when I got nervous. I thought, oh God, this thing, I done made him mad. And I started to pick up my gun and head out. And they didn't move. None of them did. They just staring at me. All of them were staring at me. They didn't try to do anything, didn't act aggressive or nothing. And I tried to talk to them. Hey, I'm here not to harm you. What do you guys? I don't remember what all I was saying, but I was trying my best to be friendly and let them know, and they just kept sitting there. They just let me do whatever I was doing and realized that I wasn't there to harm them. These creatures have an amazing ability to know what your intentions are, and I learned that over the nearly 5 years I spent with this family I'm talking about on the river. So I became friends with this family, and I would go visit them either every day or every other day, sometimes for an hour, sometimes for 3 or 4 hours, sometimes the whole day. Sometimes I'd camp out in there all night. So became friends with them, and it went on for a long time. They become very close to me. The female, when last time I seen her, she was probably close to 6 foot tall. The one behind her was bigger than that, and then the one that watched over him, his name was Tobias. He was over 7 foot, and there was an entire family that lived in there. I seen parts of them, parts of their face, parts of their body. They never came out and showed themselves like these 3 did, but I became very close to them. I started bringing them gifts, different. I never even heard of gifting back in that time. This was 1999. I didn't know anything about a gifting, and like I said, there weren't any groups or anybody to talk to about these creatures. And I left my shotgun after that last time that I met all 3 of them, and didn't worry about them anymore. I felt kind of comfortable with them, and I started leaving them things, and I realized what they liked to eat, what they didn't like to eat. I brought them about everything you could think of to eat, and I figured out what they didn't like. And I didn't bring food every time I went. I'd try to bring food, every week or so. I didn't do it. I didn't make a habit of doing it every day because I didn't want them to come to dependent on it. But I brought them all kinds of things, and they brought me things. They brought me live fish. 3 of them laying next to my bucket when I went in. They were still flopping. And they made me a real cool wood milk carton that they had found in the river. Apparently, it was a red and white cardboard carton, half-gallon milk, and they put sticks through it that came out on all 4 sides like an X. They had X's in there, and that was the marker that their family goes by, the X. And I've learned that, and a lot of time and a lot of energy spent with them, and they're so very intelligent, and they do read your intentions, and they can definitely pick up if you're a person with a good heart or a bad heart, and they seem to know what you're going to do before you do it, and their abilities are incredible. They're definitely so intelligent. They're definitely not an ape. They're a human hybrid, and I believe that. And I had a lot of good times with those creatures, and I could go in, but it'd take a long time. A lot of other things happen there.
Right.
But that completely changed my whole theory about these creatures, because I'd met some that weren't aggressive. They were friendly with me. I was like their family. They trusted me, and they learned to be as the same as I was with them. They didn't mind me being there, and I didn't mind them being there. And they showed me that I was part of them, and
Right.
it went on for almost 5 years. So it was a really cool thing. I can't if I could find another family like that again, I would probably go back and do it again. But it's so difficult to have that type of experience, and I've had a couple other families since then, but nothing like those. They weren't friendly like those were. So that changed my life about these creatures. I wasn't frightened of them anymore. I realized there's good and bad in everything. The first one I ran into was not very friendly, and he was aggressive. And these were never like that. And even after all the things that all the years we spent together, they were truly like my friends, very close friends.
Do you think they are, I'm sure you've heard stuff, but do you think Bigfoot are flesh and blood?
Oh, I have no doubt they're flesh and blood. Now, don't get me wrong. Some of them do have paranormal abilities, and they also have other abilities. They have a very high vibration. Their energy level is so much higher than ours. That's why so many pictures, I believe, that you see, even I've seen them in the woods like that at times. They have like a fuzzy look to them. And I've never seen one go interdimensional or cloak right in front of my eyes. I did see one of these creatures walk behind a big tree and never came out, and it wasn't nothing there. It just vanished. But
That was my next question.
I did not see it, go interdimensional, though. Now, my closest friend, Ron Moorhead, my best 2 friends, Ron Moorhead and Martin Groves, we've done a lot of Martin and I have been researched together for 30-something years, and you know, we've seen some things. Ron thinks they have the ability to go interdimensional or cloak, and because of the higher vibration energy they have. So,
You're
and I
right.
believe that. So,
I do too. That was what I was going to ask you, if you think they can cloak or be invisible, because I had a little incident where something was invisible. I couldn't see it, you know, but
right,
I know what it was. There's no doubt in my mind. And
right.
that was, I was going to ask you if you thought that they could cloak, or if it's just like their hair,
Yeah, I
like a
think
polar
they
bear.
can. I think they can. I have not seen one cloak, but I do think they can. I have seen. I have been in the woods with another family that was also in the Cheatham County area, way further down from where this took place. The years I spent with that family, but I did see one that looked like something walking through the woods, but I couldn't tell what it was. It was like almost like a figure, but it wasn't. You couldn't tell what it was. So I don't know if that was a creature cloaking or what it was, but it was some type of something walking through the area we were in, and you could see like an outline, but blurry. It's hard to explain.
Like
So
the predator.
yeah, I was similar to that. Yes, yeah, very
Yep.
similar to that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Those have been reported. Do you want to tell about your upcoming documentary?
Yeah, we've got a documentary coming out this year. Ethan Oates reached out to me back, I don't know, months ago, and asked me if I would do a documentary in an area that has a lot of creatures in it, a lot of structures, an area that I've never been to, and I've never seen as many creatures as I've seen pictures of. And some of these creatures, I've never even seen anything like them. So I committed to go as long as my team could go with me, and Ron Moorhead would be with me, Martin Groves, and my buddy Mike Smith, who's probably one of the best guys on the ground when it comes to tracking. And he's done some adventures with Martin Groves and Ron and myself. And it looks like it's going to be a real interesting trip. We're thinking hopefully sometime in March is when it gets started.
That'd be good. I can't wait for that.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous about it because I've never seen creatures like these before. Some of them look like aliens, some of them look like Bigfoot, some of them look like Dog Man, some of them look like something I've never seen. So
Right.
I
That
don't know
place
how.
is
It's very strange. It's just one of those areas. There's a lot of areas like that. We've got some hot spots ourselves in Land Between the Lakes where we normally do our research at. So
yeah, that place is off the hook down
we've
there.
had some.
There's all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, we've had some crazy experiences there, a lot of them over the years. Martin Groves and I, the documentary that we did with the massive dog man we seen about 5 to 7 foot from me, and that was really crazy. Well, maybe I can come back on again and tell you about that and a little more about my Bigfoot on the river. So
that'd be great if you want to come back.
Sure, yeah, I'll be glad to come back. I hate to not finish the story or on anything, but it's just time consuming when you go into the details of that, and I don't want to take that much time up for you. But
yeah, do you want to tell about your Facebook?
my
Facebook,
my Facebook group is called Bigfoot Believers and Other Creatures, and I believe I think we're the second largest private cryptid group in Facebook history now. We're up to 70,000 people, but we're a private group. There's some public groups that have that many people, but we don't allow any criticism or ridicule or any of that in our group. Everybody's nice and treats everybody with respect. So that's a little different with the way we are in our group. So we'd like to have you join that. Plus, Ron Moorhead, my super close friend, and I have our own podcast that comes on every other Monday night. It's called Two Real Cryptid Legends, and we'll be on this coming Monday night. And we're on United Public Radio Network, and Michelle DeRochers is our close friend and our moderator and manager, and she's on every show with us too. And we've had a real good show coming up, and I appreciate anybody to come check us out.
Awesome. I'm going to go check that out. I didn't know you guys had a show.
We started about 5 shows ago. You know, Ron and I've been talking about doing this a long time. We'd be laying in a cabin, talking at night, or in the camp, or out researching, and we finally put it together thanks to Michelle helping us with it, and we're enjoying it. We had a good time. So
That's awesome.
I appreciate you having me on here. Really do. I've enjoyed being here, and I hope you'll have me back again.
Of course, I would love that, and I appreciate you coming on and taking the time to share some of your encounters. We appreciate
Sure.
that.
Yeah, thanks a
All
lot.
right.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, and thank everybody for tuning in and for being here to watch. We appreciate you.
Thank you
Thank you,
very
and I'll
much.
see you next time.